I got to apprentice under a German brewmaster for close to 8 months, and then took over as the brewmaster when he went back. It was funny, he had dual citizenship of Mexico and Germany. So when he left St. Louis, he went back to Mexico. So the first couple of brews that I did with him, I'm on FaceTime and he's sitting poolside in Monterey with in his swim trunks with a cooler full of beer, teaching me how to still use the system. And it was an interesting way of learning, but yeah, the entire brew system was in German. So it's not like and they were in German acronyms for buttons. So I couldn't really just Google things and be like, what's this button do? I had to call him every time I had any kind of issue.
Where do you find a family of communities connected by the storied Mississippi River, where young explorers and dreamers, investors and entrepreneurs thrive? Where can you connect with real people living and creating in a place that's as genuine as it is quirky? QC, that's where.
Thanks for listening to QC That's Where. I'm Katrina, your host, and today I've got Charlie Cole, the brewmaster at Blue Cat Brewing Company in Rock Island. Charlie, hey, what's up? Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we just mentioned Blue Cat Brewing Company. As a few minutes ago, we were talking before we started this recording, we were talking about you are a little over a year now into the revival of Blue Cat. How's it going?
It's a whole new challenge for me, but it's been a blast.
Is it much different from, I mean, you've brewed at a number of places locally and, St. Louis, around the country. So, I mean, is it much different than your previous brewing experiences?
Definitely. Being an owner, and I'm also the general manager, marketing director, brewing all the beer. So a lot of hats, and I've never actually worked in a restaurant before, and we're a brew pub. We have a full kitchen. So managing and operating a restaurant is completely new to me. That's been the biggest challenge. I can make beer anywhere, anytime, but managing a restaurant on top of that has been quite the challenge.
That's interesting because, obviously, like, your background is led up to this point. You're a brewmaster. It sounds like you can probably brew a batch of beer with your eyes closed. So it's like, you can kind of get that going. You've got that, you're seasoned with that. And then, like, the new challenge for you is the, like, actual GM.
Right. Yeah. I definitely, even before I started professionally brewing, when I was just home brewing in St. Louis, always wanted to open my own brewery, have my own brewery. Never really thought about the aspect of having food there. It was always just like, I want to brew beer. And I got to a point where I kind of felt like I capped out of just being a head brewer somewhere, and wanted to take the big leap and to open my own place, and did a whole bunch of education and did a bunch of business plans and found a space and got everything ready. And I was going to build out a brand new building from scratch and had everything planned out. And then Blue Cat became available. So it's a lot cheaper and easier to take over an established brewery than it is to build one from the ground up. So just a great opportunity at the exact right time for me.
And people who are, familiar, either live in the Quad Cities or are familiar with it. I mean, Blue Cat was a longtime staple, and I think people were happy to see it kind of return. Is that what you've seen too?
Absolutely. When I first moved up here just a few years ago, I got familiar with a lot of the breweries. I had actually only been into Blue Cat once before they changed hands and became Big Swing. So I didn't really get a very good grasp on just how important this place was until it was gone. Then everybody was like, oh man, Blue Cat used to have this food. It used to have this beer. It had all these stories, all this history that I was learning over the years after they were no longer here. So now that I've kind of been back in charge and bringing the brand back, I hear stories every day, especially when we first opened. Every day I would have a new customer come in and say, that's where I had my first date with my wife, and we've been married for 15 years now, and we have 2 kids, and we've had both baby showers for both of our kids upstairs in the private event space. And so there's so many stories with people, and we knew we couldn't make it the old Blue Cat. Like, I obviously was never around. I didn't have my own experiences here to really know exactly how it was. We just kind of had the plan of picking off where they left off. So we brew a lot of their beers. All of our food's different, but I've seen the menus, I've heard the stories, I've seen pictures enough to where we are just kind of moving in that vein. They were always changing things up and being really adventurous and creative with food. So we do the same thing. And as much as I love to recreate the award-winning beers from the 90s, that's been a fun challenge for me as a brewer. But I can also come up with new and innovative beers that go right along the same vein as those older ones.
So what are you working on right now? What's a new like creative spin you're taking on the brew?
We haven't made too many changes to the old beers. I try to keep those pretty much exactly how they are. The Big Bad Dog, Arkham Stout. I do an American pale ale that's similar to the Off the Rail pale ale, which was the first beer brewed here at Blue Cat in 1993.
Oh my gosh.
So that's an English pale ale and I make an American version of it. So that's kind of like my own little twist on something. I originally apprenticed under a German brewmaster in St. Louis. So I've been making a lot of German lagers or just European lagers.
Okay.
Those are starting to become more popular again, which is great because I love to brew them. They're very technically hard and a big challenge for me. So I pretty much always have a lager, at least one in the tank right now, and naturally carbonating them and bringing on that challenge. We do sours, we do hazy IPAs, so we keep up with the trends there. But most of our taps are the old school 90s beers. Just trying to make them better and bring them back. A lot of those beers when they first came out in the early 90s, there weren't schools to go to for brewing all over the country. There wasn't the internet, there wasn't a whole bunch of books. So it's just kind of word of mouth of what these styles were before Dan Cleveland created them here. So it's really fun to kind of like give them a little bit of a modern bringing to where they kind of fit more to the actual style guidelines. But for the most part, we don't change much of anything.
No, Charlie, you're like, I would like to call like a brewer's brewer. You've got so much education. You've been, the head brew master at so many places, and you've got, a worldwide education. I mean, can you talk a little bit more about your apprenticeship in St. Louis?
Yeah, so I was a home brewer in St. Louis for just a couple of years, and I worked at a homebrew shop part-time, and just sitting behind the counter, just reading every package, every book that we had in the shop to just get better at home brewing. And I was in a Facebook group, St. Louis Homebrewers Facebook group, and a German guy was in there and saying that they were going to open up a brewery in Belleville, my hometown. And he was looking for an assistant. And I was like, well, if he's looking for an assistant in a homebrewers group, then I guess we don't need to have like formal education and experience. He's looking for somebody like me. So I applied and went through the whole vigorous interview process with the brewers in Germany and got picked somehow. So I got to apprentice under a German brewmaster for close to 8 months, and then took over as the brewmaster when he went back. It was crazy because I was brewing 5 gallons at home, and then when I got to work, I was brewing 40 hectoliters, so 4,000 liters batches.
Oh my God. Okay. So, I mean, you learned under him, and at any point when did you finally feel like, okay, I can take over this operation?
I never did. I just kind of got thrown into the fire. That was funny. He had dual citizenship of Mexico and Germany. So when he left St. Louis, he went back to Mexico. So the first couple of brews that I did with him, I'm on FaceTime, and he's sitting poolside in Monterey in his swim trunks with a cooler full of beer, teaching me how to still use the system. And it was an interesting way of learning. But yeah, the entire brew system was in German. So it's not like and they were in German acronyms for buttons. So I couldn't really just Google things and be like, what's this button do? I had to call him every time I had any kind of issue.
Okay. I mean, did any any great successes or chaoses come out of this situation for you?
Great learning experience for
Yeah.
sure. I definitely learned how to write SOPs, standard operating procedures, really well, because I had to write them to remind myself if I got stuck. I couldn't just always call him with time differences and stuff if he was in Germany and things. So I had to take very detailed notes of operating procedures and things. And I've kind of carried that along to each brewery that I work out of, making sure that I have everything written down. That way, if I have to train somebody, they have a reference readily available. And yeah, that was definitely, I ended up going back to that brewery during the pandemic, and I had worked at 4 other breweries since then. So when I went back, I was like, I don't remember how to use any of this stuff, but all of my notes were there. So like, I just got to jump back in and at least had my own references there.
And was it all still in German at that point when you
All
came
still,
back?
oh yeah, that brewery is still in German. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that was an authentic experience for you.
absolutely.
So talk about the local breweries. I mean, we've got, the QC Ale Trail. There's 18 breweries on that trail, and you've worked at, a handful of them. Talk about which ones you've been at and any highlights that have come out of those experiences.
Yeah, I worked at Bent River first. So that was directly after the German brewery in St. Louis. I got to a point where I wanted to make American craft beer and not just the same 4 German lagers over and over again. I kind of got burned out on that. So Bent River took me on. I kind of worked my way up from keg washing, all the way up to being the research and development brewer, coming up with new batches on their pilot system. So yeah, great experience working with those guys. I got to be the marketing director too. So I ran all of their social media and doing interviews like this and being on the news and stuff, which was always really fun. And they gave me a lot of opportunity just to kind of run with things. So had a blast there. Kind of capped out where they could use me, and got an opportunity to go to Geneseo Brewing Company in Geneseo. Their head brewer was leaving to go to another brewing position, and that's definitely a thing in the Quad Cities. If one brewer moves anywhere, we play musical chairs and we bounce around breweries. So I took his position at Geneseo Brewing, and quickly realized that I was way in over my head. I had never been a head brewer anywhere. I had except for the German brewer where I'm only making 4 lagers. So I had complete free reign to do whatever I wanted, but I also had to do all of the taxes, and I had to do all of the scheduling and planning things out, and especially keeping their flagships on and then still trying to be experimental and come up with my own things. I just knew I didn't have the education for it. To jump into a brewery that was already so established. They had already been around for 7 years when I got in there. So that's when I started education. So I'd already been at 3 breweries. I was on my 3rd brewery and a head brewer at a brewery when I started getting formal education.
Okay, so your formal education, you studied in Vermont, San Diego, London, am I right?
I'm doing some international right now. Yeah.
Okay.
So I started in St. Louis University, started a brewing science and operations program. And it was while I was already at Geneseo, but I knew a lot of the people that were involved in putting the program together. A lot of them were industry legends in St. Louis, 20 plus years of experience in craft beer in St. Louis that were teaching the classes. So I got in from the ground floor. I got in with going to meetings and going to panel discussions and asking questions and helping kind of build the program. And then I was in their inaugural class. And as part of the inaugural class, I was the only student that was already a professional brewer. So I kind of had a different spin on what I was trying to get out of it. And a lot of it was also helping to teach from my experiences. Because a lot of the instructors have been in the industry 20 plus years. I was in my 3rd year of professional brewing. So, and different scales. I had brewed on 40 hectoliter brew systems to 5-barrel brew systems. Bent River's a 2-barrel pilot system. So lots of different experience that I was able to give back to the program while I was getting formal education to kind of fill in the holes of what I hadn't picked up from books or podcasts or forums and Facebook groups and things like that. So did St. Louis University. It was a hybrid program. online and in person. So we got to go to a bunch of other breweries in St. Louis. I'd go down there once a month and we got to do the research pilot brewery at Anheuser-Busch, the place where Bud Light got invented. And we were the first non-employees to ever tour that building. And that was
cool.
pretty cool. And yeah, so that was a great program. I'm still heavily involved with continuing that program and keeping up with them. I'm the face of their marketing, their ads and everything. So I'll meet people in Chicago or San Diego and Vermont and things are like, we know you, you're all over our Facebook. So that's always a weird thing.
That's so cool.
But yeah, I've really enjoyed that program. I'd like to take it all over again. I liked it so much. But then, yeah, during COVID, I wanted to continue my education. I had already completed the SLU program and was looking for online programs. I knew I wanted to open my own brewery. So I looked into online programs, found University of Vermont, had a business of craft beer program. So I was like, perfect. It's accounting, it's marketing, it's distribution, things that I had never really had any experience with that I knew I was going to need to know if I ever opened my own brewery. So I started taking that program, but I ended up, the first class that I took was actually what was supposed to be the last class. So I had like a whole 8 months before the program started over again to hit the first 2 courses.
Oh my gosh.
So during that break, I started the San Diego State University's Brewing Science and Operations program. So I ended up doing 2 programs at the same time when the Vermont one started back up, but both were great in their own way. San Diego's was fantastic. I would definitely, they're always adding courses. So I've taken even 2 or 3 courses in their program after already getting my certificate. And then my last one that I just recently completed, I'm in the Master Brewers Association, and I was awarded a scholarship and got to go to an advanced brewing science program through University of Wisconsin in Madison. So just finished up that. That was a 6-week program with a week in person. So we got to brew at New Glarus. We got to brew at another small brewery up there. And all of our instructors were 20, 30-year veterans of the industry all over the world, not just American craft beer, but we had an instructor from Pilsner Urquell in Czech Republic and German equipment manufacturers and things. So that was a great program. The students were from all over North America. So I had other students in there from Ecuador and Canada and lots from Mexico and things. And we were all kind of, everybody in the program had already been a professional brewer for at least 4 years. So it was definitely an advanced hands-on program that was definitely my favorite so far, if I had to pick any.
It's funny, like all the different, all the different experiences in these classes that you've had, and you say you continue to go back and find new ways to further your education. You'd think you'd run into some redundancy in the things that you've learned, but I think it just goes to show how fluid this industry is and how it's continuously growing. You find new ways to modernize the traditional craft beers at Blue Cat, for instance, through all this education. I mean, is there anything that you've been surprised to learn or stumble upon as you continue to take these courses?
Every time I take one, I find out that either I've been doing this one little thing wrong for 5 years and never knew it, or just finding a new way to explain something is the big one. There's a lot of things that you read it in a book and it's chemistry and it's just way over my head. And then I sit in a classroom with somebody that's been teaching water chemistry for 20 plus years and worked for Anheuser-Busch for 30 years and things like that. And, that person's experience of being able to explain it in layman's terms or in a brewer's field and not just in a chemistry lab way is fantastic. And every time I take a course, I get a little something like that. And what I'm trying to pick up on is I eventually, as being an owner and a head brewer, I'm always going to have assistant brewers coming in and out. They're going to learn under me. A lot of them are never having any experience or education coming in to work for me. So the more that I can learn, the better I can teach people that are going to be under me. And I eventually want to have start a program in the Quad Cities, a brewing program in the Quad Cities. So every time I take one of these programs, I'm also taking notes on, oh, I like this out of this class. They did this really well. This is how we should do it if we had a program in the Quad Cities.
Would you run that like independently, or would you maybe like link up with one of our colleges in the area?
So I can't go too deep into it, but I'm
Come
already
on,
linked
Charlie,
up.
I want the details.
Already linked up with a local community college, and
Awesome.
we've already kind of put a program together, and we're just waiting for approval on the academic national board scale of things. It's already been approved by the school, it's already been approved by the state, and now it's just got to get national approval, and then we'll finally have a brewing program in the Quad Cities.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. So you can't say which school yet.
Can't say which school, just in case anything, goes one way or another in a bad way, and we have to push it back. But we're hoping that everything gets approved to where fall semester of 2023, it'll already be implemented.
And will this be something that students can take online, in person, both, either?
Yeah, it'll be a hybrid program. So it'll be most of the hours weekly will be online, and then it'll be one in-person class every week. So definitely can't really learn brewing completely unless it's some aspect of hands-on.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that you could definitely, learn at your own pace from videos and reading and things, and then go into a classroom setting and really put it all together.
Now, stop me if I'm going too far into the details. I don't want to ruin anything for you, but like, will this be a program that allows the class to come into like Blue Cat, for instance, and actually see a real operation hands-on that way?
Absolutely. Yeah, there'll definitely be, I've already talked with several other brewers that I'm close with in the Quad Cities. So there will be instructors that are local brewers. There will definitely be hands-on activities at breweries, lots of sensory, lots of actual hands-on brewing, cleaning, those kind of things will happen at breweries and not just in a classroom setting.
This is really huge. I don't want to jump the gun, but like, congratulations. This is going to be amazing.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Never
yes.
know when it comes to governments and things like that. So
amen. Yeah.
we're all really excited for it, and everybody has been super on board with that college that I'm working with. And yeah, everything just kind of came together at the right time. I was looking for an assistant brewer, and I'm like, wow, the job market here for brewers is just non-existent. We need some kind of incentive of education to get people to want to take this career path. Though, for how many breweries that we've added in the last 10 years and how much growth of those breweries that there's been, we need brewers. I need brewers to work for me. So we knew there was, if we had some kind of education program, at least we could be sending people that are interested in working in a brewery to get some education, get some hands-on, so that they're super prepared to work for any brewery in the Quad Cities, or start their own.
Coming away, when they're done with the program, will they come away with, some kind of degree or certificate, or what's like the end game?
Yeah, it'd be a professional certificate. So.
That's so awesome. I'm so excited. And you're an instructor as part of this?
I'll be an instructor, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what
With
class I'm going
local...
to teach yet. Something basic for sure. But there's definitely a lot of people that are more sciencey than I am when it comes to things. So I'll let them do that. And I know I don't want to get too deep into it, but I'm close friends with Adam Ross, who's the head brewer at Twin Span Brewing. He's a certified Cicerone. And when I talked about, hey, if I put a sensory class in here of like tasting and getting all of the Cicerone stuff, is that something that you'd be interested in teaching? He's like, absolutely. So yeah, there's a lot of every brewer that I've talked to that I'm like, hey, you're the best that I know at this. Would you be interested in teaching a course, or just for 1 week, just to come in and talk about this one thing that I know you're exceptionally better than anybody else I know at this. And everybody that I've talked to has been super interested in getting involved. So I think it'll be a great thing, not only for getting just more bodies and jobs into this career field, but for the breweries that are already here, it'll be great.
It's a great, testament showing like how big craft beer has gotten in the Quad Cities. There's on the QC Ale Trail, there's 18 breweries that are part of it, 20 locations, and growing at the education aspects, you don't have to go, here, there, and everywhere to learn. I can only see that growing, and Quad Cities beer, craft beer and breweries will be a real point of, attraction for people wanting to visit or maybe move here.
Yeah, I mean, especially if there's education involved in the local industry, it's only going to continue to grow. You have 5 cities out in Bettendorf that's opening a giant production facility. You got Great Revivalist in Geneseo that's opening up 3 to 4 locations in the next year. They're expanding like crazy. And yeah, if there's more jobs, if there's more people that are educated in our industry, then it just allows more of the established breweries to grow and expand, and for new breweries to open up. We're definitely not saturated. People, how many is too many breweries? There's plenty of room. There's plenty of areas. Pre-prohibition, every neighborhood had a local brewery that made one kind of beer, and that was their beer. And there was several thousand breweries pre-prohibition. Now there's over 9,000 in the US today. It's only going to continue to grow. We're going to see less of the big beer, and we're going to see more of local breweries, and we're all here for it. We all support each other. It's a great industry to be in. I'm friends with so many brewers in the Quad Cities, more than non-brewers probably. So it's definitely a great thing to be a part of.
Okay, so let's talk about what's happening. You started as a podcast, now you're on 97X. How did that evolve?
Again, one of those kind of education things. I had the idea to start a podcast to get to know brewers that I was inspired by and looked up to. I thought if I had a podcast that I could reach out to them and have a conversation with them and record it and kind of put it out there for other brewers that were young in the industry that were probably having the same questions that I had. So that's what it started as. I did that for about 2 years. I think we had over 75 episodes, thousands of listeners, and had a blast doing that. And it got to a point, I was working for Bent River at the time as their marketing director, and started reaching out to 97X, who we were affiliated with, about any time that we had a new beer that I wanted to promote. They were like, yeah, come in and talk about whatever beer that you have. And so I had been on with Dwyer and Michaels. I'd been on with Bill Stage a couple of times in the afternoon. And Bill had suggested, why don't we just make this a regular thing? Why don't we just come in and talk about not just Bent River beer, but Quad Cities beer and Quad City beer events, and just promote local craft beer once a week. And I was like, that sounds great. I'd love to do that. Brandon Mavis, who's the marketing director at Front Street now, he had been involved with the Quad City Beer Club and Quad City Beer podcast. And so we linked up with him also, who was putting, every week he was putting out where new beers were tapping, what days they were tapping, what events were coming up that week. So weekly, he had like this list of everything going on with beer in the Quad Cities. So he would give us that list. We would talk about it, and we would post it on their website under What's Happening blog. But we just used the same name because it was already a great name from the podcast. So when we were trying to we thought about coming up with a new name, and he's like, man, I just really like the name of your podcast. I was like, well, let's just use that. We can,
if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah. So yeah, eventually the podcast just I became too busy of doing all the other things that I was doing. And so What's Happening just became a radio segment on 97X with Bill Stage. We do it either on Mondays or Tuesdays, depending on our schedule. And been doing it for 2 years now.
People are thirsty for knowing about the new craft beer events. And that leads me to have you talk about the Battle on the Bell. Craft beer events are kind of becoming more popular, I think, in the area. Like there's Brouhaha, there's Frogtown Craft Brewing Festival, and then Battle on the Bell is a super popular event this summer. I was telling you before we started this, I heard the ads on the radio. I was like, that sounds so much fun. And it sold out so quickly.
Yeah, that was a fun project. We can't wait to do it again next year. That kind of just evolved from my my involvement with 97X and Town Square Media of just, I'm there every week and they know me as the beer guy. I joke and say I'm probably the longest tenured unpaid employee of Town Square Media. So I was just there talking with the director after one of our What's Happening segments, and he was like, Bill and I had been bouncing around an idea of doing a beer festival. We were going to do it either in downtown Rock Island or downtown Moline, and do it as a competition where it was like a people's choice kind of thing. And everybody bring their best beers because you're going to get a big trophy or something out of it. And so we were bouncing around those ideas. And Ryan, the director of Town Square Media, came up to us one day and he was like, hey, the Celebration Bell is looking to do some kind of big event with us. And we're just trying to figure out like a good promotion that we could do to just get some people on their boat. And we're like, can we do a beer festival on a boat? Because we were talking about doing a beer festival. And he's like, that sounds terrible. That sounds like the worst logistic nightmare. He's like, I'm in, let's figure it out. Like,
wow, oh my God.
Too crazy to do. So let's do it. So Ryan was the backbone of getting everything legally put together. I got all the breweries to sign up, and I worked enough beer festivals and been a part of enough beer festivals that I kind of knew the logistics of putting it together a beer festival. But the legal stuff and the insurance and all of that stuff, that was all Ryan from Town Square. He was all over that, and he did a great job on all of that stuff. So yeah, it was a blast. Like, yeah, we thought it was going to be popular. We didn't think it would sell out over 400 tickets in a day and a half. Like, we had to cut it off because we're like, if it's bad weather, we can't have people on the top deck. It's got to, everybody's got to fit inside. So, and it did end up raining that day. So it was kind of good that it worked out that day. But we had 400 people on a boat. We had 16 breweries. We had 2 breweries run out of beer before we left the dock. They had to like get emergency beer run to them from their breweries before we could leave because people were ready to have a good time. It was such a blast. We thought it might be weird of being like, oh, you're stuck on this boat for an hour and a half. Like, you can't just leave when you've had enough beer, or when you've tried everything, or you're bored. You have to stay on this boat. So it was great. And I think people like got to know each other, which was really cool because you're just talking to people, especially after you've had a few beers, and all of the brewers were there. So people had a chance to like actually have a conversation about the beer they were tasting with the brewers, because there was plenty of time and room to move around and have conversations with people. So we've already got the date set for next year. We're definitely doing it again. We know what we could do better with it. And yeah, that's definitely one of my new favorite events. I'm very happy to be a part of it. And I hope to keep being a part of it. I hope it's a yearly thing that I get to be involved with.
Other than the weather, what would you change about it? Like, what's in the plans to make it better?
I think the one thing was we didn't really communicate well with other events that were happening that day. So the idea was to have it as the grand finale of Quad City Craft Beer Week. So in the past, the finale of Quad City Craft Beer Week was to do a tap takeover at one of the breweries that has a lot of taps that could have everybody's beer on tap. But every year we got more and more breweries. We got less chance of finding a place that could put everybody's beer on tap. And every year we ran into legal hiccups of breweries, because we're on 2 different sides of the river in 2 different states, of legally getting people's beer to whatever side that we needed to get it to. So the logistics were terrible with that, and we got to a point where we're like, hey, there's 18 of us now. That's a lot to do. We need to figure out something else. And we had that meeting for Quad City Craft Beer Week the day that we finalized everything for Battle on the Bell. And so I suggested, why don't we just do this event as the finale of it? And everybody was on board, but we didn't check it. And it ended up that the Shops with Hops in LeClaire was on the same day at like 2-hour difference of when it started. So there was several breweries that had already committed to doing that one because they do it every year. So we were hoping to get over 20 breweries on the boat. We only ended up with 16 because there were 2 events going on the same day. So we've already talked with the organizer from that event. We're going to kick off Quad City Craft Beer Week with the Battle on the Bell, and then it'll end with Shops with Hops. That way there's 2 big events on both ends of it.
Right.
And then you're visiting all of the breweries throughout the week.
So 16's not bad, honestly, for, for having that run in. And it just shows there is room for everybody. It's so hard because in the Quad Cities, there's like so much going on all the time. So to try and coordinate something like that, where there's a clean day where, okay, I've got this, you've got this, it's got to be tough. But yeah, doing that at the beginning is going to be a great change. And then everybody's happy, right?
Yep, definitely. Yeah, I think it'll be a good time again.
What other, outside of that, what's another beer festival that you like to go to or participate in?
Well, Frogtown is this Saturday. They did it one year. The year that they did it, it was a blast. Bill and I actually did a live What's Happening segment there and had our own booth kind of right in the middle where we just kind of grabbed brewers all day and interviewed them. We won't be doing that again. It was very loud in there.
Oh, yeah.
Not good audio quality. So we won't be doing that again, but it was a blast. I love that it's inside. It's during not non-beer festival season,
right?
But anytime between April and August, there's like somewhere in the region, 2 or 3 beer festivals happening every weekend. So a lot of us brewers kind of like have to pick and choose now of like which events we're actually going to do, or this one being in November where there's no other festivals or big events like that happening. A lot more of us are able to participate in this one. So I thought he said up to 60 brands are going to be there. So not all represented by their actual breweries. They'll have some volunteers pouring for some other ones outside of our region. But yeah, that's a lot of different brands of beer to be in one place. So
honestly,
it's a great time. I got family coming up for the holidays, so they're staying the weekend, and we're going to go to the beer festival. And it's the promoter, Josh Sherrard, promotes it as a Friendsgiving. It's a great Friendsgiving event. After Thanksgiving, get all your friends, get your family that's in town, go to this beer festival, have a ton of different breweries represented there, and have a really good time. It's in the Rust Belt. They're going to have live music. The food's great. They have Peaceful Palates there, which is one of my favorite nonprofits in the Quad Cities, which is actually co-run by the original owner of Blue Cat, Martha. So she does
awesome.
soups and things, and it's all food that's donated from restaurants that they repurpose and then they feed the homeless with. So a great charity and a very, very meticulously well put together event. Josh does a great job with it, and we haven't had it for 2 years because of COVID and just everybody getting back into the swing of things. So very, very excited that it's back.
Yeah, it's time for stuff to start coming back. And I've been seeing that, all year, things are slowly starting to, return, and it's very exciting. And Frogtown Craft Beer Festival is on, the information there is on visitquadcities.com/events. So if you're listening and you want to check that out, you can find the info there. Charlie, I'm super excited about your education program coming up, and I will stop asking you things about it, but I will keep a keen ear because I really want to know when that's going to fire up. Hopefully next fall, fingers crossed for you guys. So I'm going to throw this end to you. I want you to fill in, the drill, fill in the QC, that's where, fill in the blank.
That's where great beer's made.
Well said. Always. Thank you so much, Charlie. Really hope you guys have a good time at Frogtown, and that Battle on the Bell doesn't make you too stressed out planning that for next year. I know you're already in the works for that, but very, very exciting. Everything you've got going on at Blue Cat. We will keep in touch.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to QC, That's Where, a podcast powered by Visit Quad Cities. Text Visit QC to 38314 for insider events, activities, and updates sent straight to your phone. That's VISITQC, one word, to 38314. Message and data rates may apply.